The receipt slapped the kitchen counter so hard, the salt shaker jumped. Imani didn't flinch. She just looked down at the paper, then up at Grant Thompson's face. His voice was low, tight, like he was trying not to wake the house with his anger. Care to explain this? He jabbed the circled total with his finger. $300, winter coats, boots. 2 kids who had grown an inch and a half since last season. Imani kept her hands flat on the counter. They needed them, she said. Simple. Calm. Grant's mouth curled, not quite a smile. They needed them, he repeated, as if she'd said something ridiculous. And you decided to handle it by draining my card without a word. It's not draining. It's for Miles and Jasmine. She tried to keep her voice even. Miles' sleeves were up to his elbows. Jazz's shoes. He cut her off with a small, sharp laugh. You know what's funny? I work 12-hour days. I sit in meetings where people expect answers. I carry the pressure. And then I come home and the only surprise I get is my account lighter again. Imani swallowed. She didn't want to do this in the kitchen. Not tonight. Not when she could feel little ears somewhere down the hall. And down the hall behind the corner there were little ears. Miles stood barefoot on the carpet, half hidden in shadow, holding Jasmine's small hand like he was anchoring her. Jasmine's face was sleepy, confused. Miles's eyes were wide and alert, locked on the kitchen like he could stop a storm with willpower. Come on, he whispered to his sister. Just listen. Don't talk. Jasmine nodded, thumb in her mouth, leaning into him. In the kitchen, Grant leaned in closer, voice dropping further. Do you know how it looks to me? Like you don't think, like you don't care, like you just swipe and swipe because you can. Imani's heart thumped once, hard. She kept her expression smooth. Grant, it's not because I can. It's because they're your children. His eyes flashed at that, like she'd made it personal. It is personal, he snapped. Then, with that same controlled anger, he said the sentence that changed the temperature in the house. You're a burden on my bank card. The words didn't echo. They didn't need to. They landed and stayed. Miles's grip tightened on Jasmine's hand. Jasmine's brows pinched, not fully understanding, but sensing the shift. Miles understood too much. He always did. Imani stared at Grant for a beat that felt longer than it was. Her face didn't crumble. No tears, no shaking, no pleading, just stillness. She glanced toward the hallway, toward the dark where her children were supposed to be asleep, and her entire body made a decision, without asking permission from her emotions. She could fight back. She had 100 things she could say. The sacrifices. The move to Memphis when Jasmine was a newborn. The career she paused because he didn't want daycare, didn't want strangers raising the kids, didn't want her distracted. The way she had bent her days around his ambitions until her own name started to feel like a nickname. But the kids were listening, so she kept her voice soft. They're warm now, she said. They won't be cold at school. Grant blinked, like he hadn't expected her to ignore the insult and stick to the point. Don't do that, he said, irritated. Don't make me the villain because I'm trying to keep this family stable. Imani's eyes stayed on his. Stable isn't the same as loved. That did it. Grant shoved the receipt aside like it offended him. I'm not doing this tonight, he said, already backing away. I need air. He grabbed his keys from the bowl by the door, the same bowl Imani had bought at a church fundraiser. He didn't notice that. He didn't notice most of the things she brought into their life unless the bank app did. At the door, he turned just long enough to throw one more line over his shoulder. Stop wasting my money. Then he was gone. The door closed hard. The house inhaled and held its breath. Miles pulled Jasmine back from the corner before she could make a sound. Come on, he whispered, voice trembling in a way he tried to hide. Go back. Now. Imani stood in the kitchen alone. The oven clock blinked 7:43. Dinner was still warm. The receipt lay on the counter like evidence. She didn't chase him. She didn't text him. She didn't collapse. She just stared at the spot where he'd stood and heard his words replay in her mind, cleaner each time, sharper each time. Burden, bank card, as if her value could be measured in a swipe, as if the children were a subscription he'd forgotten to cancel. Imani turned her head slightly toward the hallway. She could picture it without looking. Miles standing there pretending to be brave. Jasmine copying him. Their small bodies learning, in real time, what love looked like in this house. And in that quiet, something inside Imani locked into place. If she stayed, her kids would grow up thinking affection was rented. That safety came with conditions. That respect had a price tag. She walked to the drawer beside the fridge, the one Grant never opened, the one he didn't know existed because he didn't cook, didn't fold, didn't search for scissors or batteries or school forms. Her fingers slid past takeout menus and old coupons until they touched a slim folder. She pulled it out. Inside were copies of birth certificates, a list of phone numbers, notes she'd written when she couldn't sleep, dates, times, small details that added up to a life she had carried quietly. Imani set the folder on the counter next to the receipt. Then she reached for her phone and stared at the screen, thumb hovering over one name, Renee. Her friend from church, the one who always said, "If you ever need me, I'm not asking why first." Imani's hand didn't shake when she hit call. If you've ever watched someone turn love into a bill, stay with me. Because what Imani does next is so calm, so legal, and so final. Grant won't even realize he's lost everything until the morning. Renee picked up on the second ring. "Imani?" Her voice came soft, alert. "Baby, what's wrong?" Imani looked at the receipt one last time. Then she looked down the hallway where her children slept. And with the same steady voice she used to soothe nightmares, she said, "I need help. Tonight. Because when someone reduces your worth to what you cost them, the only answer left is to remove the cost. Quietly. Completely. And without looking back." Imani kept opening the oven like the heat would answer for him. The chicken was done. The macaroni pie was browning at the edges. The green beans were still bright because she refused to boil the life out of them the way Grant's mother did. On the table, 4 plates sat in their places. 2 smaller ones at the ends, already set with the cups that didn't spill when little hands got clumsy. Miles's math workbook lay beside his chair because he'd insisted on finishing just one more page before dinner. Jasmine's crayons were scattered on a napkin like she was decorating the night. "Is Daddy eating with us?" Jasmine asked for the 3rd time, her voice thin with hope. Imani kept her smile in place. "He said he was running late," she replied, light and careful. "But we're going to eat soon." Miles didn't look up from his workbook. "He's always running late," he muttered, like he was talking to the numbers. Imani shot him a warning glance that was gentle but firm. "Miles!" He shrugged without meeting her eyes. He wasn't trying to be disrespectful. He was trying to make sense of a pattern adults kept pretending wasn't there. Imani's phone buzzed. Grant, still at the office. "Don't wait. No apology. No how are the kids? No save me a plate, just instruction." Imani stared at the screen for a second too long. Miles noticed anyway. He always did. "What did he say?" he asked quietly. Imani slid her phone face down like that would soften the message. "He's coming," she lied, then corrected herself because Miles hated lies more than he hated disappointment. "He might eat later." Jasmine's shoulders sagged. "But I drew him a picture. You can show him when he gets home," Imani said, walking around the table and kissing the top of her daughter's head. "And you can tell him all about it. They ate without him." Imani kept the mood warm on purpose. She asked Miles about school. She let Jasmine tell a long story about her teacher's sparkly shoes twice, like it was new both times. She laughed when Miles tried to hide a smile. She made the kids feel like the missing chair was normal, but the silence around that chair kept stretching. After dinner, she bathed Jasmine, braided her hair, and laid out clothes for tomorrow. Miles brushed his teeth and came back in his pajamas, lingering in the doorway like he was deciding whether to say something or protect her from it. "Mom," he started. Imani turned, already softening her face. "Yeah, baby?" Miles hesitated. "Is Daddy mad?" Imani swallowed. "Daddy gets stressed," she said carefully. Miles frowned. "That's not what I asked." Imani walked over and smoothed his shirt collar like he needed it straight to sleep. No, not at you. Not at Jasmine. Daddy's just tired. Miles stared at her, not convinced, then nodded like he was choosing peace. You sure? He asked. Imani cupped his cheek. I'm sure. He leaned into her hand for half a second, then pulled away like he didn't want to need comfort. Okay, he said, and went to his room. By the time both kids were tucked in, the house was clean, the dishes were stacked, and the table was wiped down. And still no Grant. Imani sat on the edge of the couch and listened for the sound of tires in the driveway, keys at the door, the heavy steps she recognized even from the second floor. When it finally came, it was almost worse than the waiting. The front door opened, closed, a pause. Then Grant's voice floated through the hallway, cheerful enough to fool someone who didn't live with him. Jazz? Miles? Imani stood up, smoothing her sweater as if she was about to meet a stranger. She walked toward the entryway. Grant Thompson stepped into view in his work clothes, tie loosened, suit jacket still on like armor. His hair was neat. His face looked tired but controlled, the way he looked when he'd spent all day being respected by people who didn't know him at home. Jasmine's bedroom door cracked open. Imani's heart sank. She'd told them to sleep. Jasmine tiptoed out, eyes half closed, clutching her crumpled drawing. Daddy, she whispered, like she was scared a normal voice would make him disappear. Grant's face softened instantly. That was the thing. He had tenderness in him. He just rationed it. Hey, pumpkin, he said, kneeling. He hugged her, quick but real, and kissed her forehead. What are you doing up? I made you this, Jasmine said, pressing the paper into his hand. Grant glanced at it. Wow, that's beautiful, he said. And for a moment he sounded like the man Imani fell in love with. You drew me big. Your daddy, Jasmine said. Like that explained everything. Grant smiled and stood. Go back to bed, okay? I'll look at it again in the morning. Jasmine nodded and padded back toward her room. Miles appeared next, quieter. He didn't run. He didn't bounce. He stood in the hallway like a small guard. Grant gave him a quick ruffle on the head. What's up, champ? Miles didn't flinch, but he didn't smile either. Hi, he said. Grant's eyes flicked to Imani, and the warmth cooled a degree. You cooked? He asked. Not as gratitude. More like he was confirming a fact. It's in the oven, Imani replied. I kept it warm. Grant exhaled and set his keys down. I told you I might have a work dinner. You texted, running late, Imani said, keeping it light. Not don't cook. Grant's jaw tightened. Imani. She stopped herself. It's fine, she said. Eat if you want. If not, I'll pack it away. Grant nodded once, like that was the acceptable answer. He walked past her toward the kitchen. Miles didn't follow. He watched. Imani followed Grant into the kitchen and pulled a plate from the cabinet. I can serve you, she offered. I'll handle it, Grant said, already opening the fridge. His eyes scanned the shelves like he was searching for something wrong. Then he reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a receipt. Imani's stomach dropped. He didn't ask her to sit. He didn't set it down gently. He slapped it on the counter with a sharp motion, like she'd committed a quiet crime and he was presenting evidence. Care to explain this? He asked. Imani glanced at the total and felt heat creep up her neck. She knew what it was. Winter coats and boots. She'd chosen practical ones, not designer. She'd even waited for a sale. They needed winter clothes, she said. Both of them. Grant pointed at the number. $300. In one afternoon. It's coats and boots, Imani repeated, slower. Not toys. Not something extra. Grant's laugh was small and bitter. It's always not extra with you. There's always a reason. Imani's hand stayed steady. Because there is a reason. Miles is growing. Jazz, I can see that they're growing, Grant snapped. I live here. Do you? Imani wanted to say. Do you live here or do you visit when it's convenient? But she didn't. Instead, she said, I'm with them all day. I see what doesn't fit. I see what they need. And I see what's missing from my account, Grant shot back. He grabbed his phone, tapped it twice, and held it out like a judge presenting a sentence. Do you know what I feel when I see that charge? Like I'm working for nothing. Like every hour I put in disappears the second you go shopping. Imani stared at the screen, then back at him. You're talking about your children like they're a charge you didn't approve. Grant's eyes narrowed. I'm talking about money, Imani. The thing that keeps this roof over our heads. The thing that keeps the lights on. The thing you don't have to think about because you're not the one earning it. There it was. Every argument took the same road eventually. Imani's voice stayed controlled. You didn't want me to work. Grant scoffed. Here we go. You didn't, Imani insisted, still calm. When Jasmine was born, you said you didn't want daycare. You said you didn't want strangers raising our kids. I said it would be better, Grant corrected, like that changed the outcome. And it was. Look at them. They're healthy. They're good kids. Because I'm with them, Imani said quietly. Grant tossed the receipt back onto the counter. So now I'm supposed to clap for you, spending my money on the bare minimum. Imani's breath caught. She looked past Grant toward the hallway. She couldn't see the kids from here, but she felt them. And then she heard a faint shift of carpet. Soft. Careful. Miles. Listening. Imani lowered her voice. This isn't about clapping. It's about respect. Grant leaned forward, voice tightening again. Respect? He repeated. You want respect? Then respect the fact that I'm the only one bringing in income. I'm the one carrying this family. Imani nodded once, slow. And I carry everything else. Grant shook his head like she was being dramatic. No, you're comfortable. You're safe. And you still act like the card has no limit, because you don't see what it takes to fill it. Imani didn't raise her voice. That was the part that made her dangerous and made Grant miss it. You're acting like I'm some stranger swiping your card for fun. Grant's eyes flashed. Because that's what it feels like. Imani stared at him. She couldn't even hear the refrigerator hum anymore. All she heard was his resentment. He took a step closer and lowered his voice as if quiet made it less cruel. You're a burden on my bank card. The sentence sat in the air like a door locking. Imani went still. She didn't gasp. She didn't cry. She didn't argue. Her eyes moved, almost automatically, toward the hallway, toward the corner where Miles stood half hidden, holding Jasmine's hand. Jasmine's eyes were sleepy and confused. Miles's face was tight, like he was trying to be made of stone. Imani's chest squeezed so hard it hurt. Not because Grant had insulted her. Because her son had heard it. Because her daughter had felt it. Imani turned back to Grant, voice low and flat. They're warm, she said. They won't be cold at school. Grant blinked, thrown off by how she didn't take the bait. Don't do that, he said, irritated. Don't turn this into me being the bad guy. I didn't, Imani replied. Grant's frustration spiked. I'm not doing this tonight, he snapped. He grabbed his keys from the bowl near the door. I need air. He walked toward the entryway, shoulders stiff. At the door, he turned just enough to throw one last line over his shoulder, like he needed the final word to feel in control. Stop wasting my money. Then he was gone. The door closed hard enough to shake the frame. Imani stayed where she was, staring at the counter, the receipt, the plate still empty, the dinner she'd kept warm like warmth could fix things. Miles stepped into the kitchen quietly, Jasmine still holding his hand. He didn't look at the receipt. He didn't look at the door. He looked at his mother. His voice was small but steady. Mom, he said. Are you okay? Imani crouched to Miles's level, keeping her voice soft. I'm okay, she said. I'm just tired. Miles didn't buy it. He looked past her toward the door, then back at her face like he was trying to read the truth between her words. Jasmine rubbed her eyes. Daddy mad, she whispered. Miles's mouth pressed into a line. He said you're a burden, he said. Not loud, just clear. Like he needed her to know he heard it. Imani didn't correct him. She didn't deny it. She just held his gaze. What does burden mean? Jasmine asked, thumb back in her mouth. Imani took a breath, careful. It means someone thinks you're too much trouble, she said. choosing the gentlest truth. But you know what else it means? Jasmine blinked. It means that person forgot how lucky they are, Imani finished. Miles's eyes flickered with something like relief, like he needed permission to believe that. Imani stood and guided them back down the hall. Both of you, back to bed, she said. Tomorrow is school. Miles hesitated at his doorway. Is Daddy coming back? He asked. Imani kept her tone steady. Yes, he'll come back. Go to sleep, baby. Miles nodded slowly, still watching her like he didn't want to close his eyes while she was hurting. When he finally slipped into bed, Imani pulled the blanket up to his chin and kissed his forehead. You did good, she whispered. Miles frowned. I didn't do anything. You protected your sister, Imani said, glancing at the hallway where Jasmine's door was closing. That matters. Miles looked down, embarrassed but proud. Okay, he murmured. Imani tucked Jasmine in next, her daughter curled into a ball instantly, small body heavy with sleep. Imani smoothed the braid she'd made earlier and kissed her cheek. Mommy? Jasmine's eyes fluttered open. Yes, baby. Are we still a family? Imani held her daughter's hand, squeezing gently. Me and you and Miles? Always, she said. Always. Jasmine's eyes closed again. Okay, she breathed and drifted off. Imani stood in the hallway after both doors were shut. For a second she listened. No TV, no music, no Grant upstairs in their room, just the quiet hum of the house that only felt like a home because she kept it that way. She returned to the kitchen and the receipt was still there. It looked harmless, a piece of paper, a number. But in her mind it was a label stamped across her chest. Burden. She picked it up and slowly folded it in half. Then she opened the drawer by the fridge, the one with batteries, rubber bands, old birthday candles, and school permission slips. Her fingers moved past the clutter with a certainty that surprised even her. The slim folder was right where she left it. Imani pulled it out and set it on the counter beside the folded receipt. The folder wasn't dramatic. It wasn't secret spy stuff. It was just what any mother kept when she knew she might need to prove something someday. Copies of birth certificates because schools always asked. Immunization records. A handwritten list of Miles's allergies. Jasmine's pediatrician info. A notebook with dates and notes. Appointments. School events. The days Grant missed. The days he promised something and didn't show. The nights he came home late and snapped at her for normal needs. It started months ago, the first time he'd called her spending a problem instead of calling it what it was, raising their kids. Imani pressed her palm flat on the folder. She wasn't doing this because she wanted revenge. She was doing this because she refused to let her children grow up thinking love came with a price tag. She moved to the living room and picked up her phone. No new messages from Grant. No, I'm sorry. No, did I go too far? She stared at the screen, thumb hovering. Then she typed one name into her contacts. Renee Carter. Renee was the kind of friend who didn't ask for gossip. She asked if you were safe. Imani hit call. It rang once. Twice, Renee answered, voice sleepy but sharp. Imani? Imani's voice stayed low. I'm sorry to call this late. Don't apologize, Renee said immediately. What happened? Imani looked toward the hallway again, as if the walls could hear. Grant said something in front of the kids, she said. Something that I can't unhear. Renee's tone changed. Tell me, Imani kept it simple. He said I'm a burden. On his bank card? There was a beat of silence. Then Renee exhaled like she'd been expecting this day. Oh, baby, she said softly. No. Imani closed her eyes. She didn't cry. She didn't need to. Her body felt like it already moved past tears. I don't want to fight, Imani said. I need to move. Renee's voice sharpened with purpose. Are you safe right now? Yes. Are the kids asleep? Yes. Good, Renee said. Listen to me. You're not doing this alone. Imani swallowed. Imani, Renee cut in gently. You remember what I told you at Bible study? If you ever needed me, you call. I'm up now. I'm here. Imani's throat tightened. Okay, she whispered. Renee didn't waste time. Do you have your documents? Birth certificates? Social security cards? I have copies, Imani said. Good. Get the originals if you can, Renee said. And your ID. And the kids' school info. Anything you can grab without making noise. Imani glanced at the folder on the counter. I have a folder, she said. Mostly copies. A notebook. Perfect, Renee said. And Imani, do you have somewhere to go? Imani's answer came quick, like she'd been carrying it in her chest. My mama's. In Mississippi. Renee let out a breath of relief. Good. That's distance. That's family. Imani's fingers tightened around the phone. Grant will call me. He'll try to talk. Let him, Renee said. But don't argue with him tonight. Tonight is about moving, not explaining. Imani looked around the kitchen, the clean counters, the dinner still in the oven, the life she kept putting back together every day. Okay, she said again, firmer this time. Renee's voice lowered. I'm going to bring you something, she said. A prepaid phone. And I have 2 attorney numbers you need. Imani blinked. Attorney? Divorce attorneys, Renee said plainly. The kind that understand custody and protection. The kind that won't let him bully you with money. Imani's heart thumped harder. This was real. This wasn't a cool down and try again tomorrow situation. Renee continued, steady. One of them helped my cousin when her ex tried to freeze her out. He thought because he paid the bills, he owned the family. He learned fast that doesn't work in court. Imani's mouth went dry. Renee, you ask for help, Renee said. This is help. Imani took a breath. Okay, she said. Where do I meet you? Stay put, Renee replied. I'll be there in 20. Keep the porch light off. I'll park down the street and walk up. Imani's eyes flicked to the window. The neighborhood was quiet. The streetlights made the driveway look like a stage. Okay, Imani repeated. And Imani? Renee added. Yes? You're not a burden, Renee said firmly. You're a mother, and you've been carrying a man who forgot how to carry himself. Imani's eyes stung, but she didn't let tears fall. Thank you, she whispered. Renee hung up. Imani didn't pace. She didn't panic. She moved. First, she turned off the oven. She pulled out the dinner and packed it into containers without clattering. If she was leaving tonight, the food didn't matter. But the quiet did. Then she went upstairs to her bedroom. Grant's side of the closet was neat in a way that made it feel untouched by real life. Suits in protective covers. Shirts pressed. Shoes lined like soldiers. Her side looked like motherhood. Sweaters folded quick. A few pairs of jeans. A robe. Imani pulled the big roller suitcase from the back of the closet. Grant's travel suitcase. The irony almost made her smile. She started with the kids. Miles's drawers first. 2 school outfits, pajamas, underwear, socks. His favorite hoodie even though it was old. Jasmine's next. Dresses, leggings, her little cardigan with the missing button. The boots Imani bought today, still with tags, because she hadn't had time to break them in. Imani moved fast, but careful, like she'd practiced. She grabbed toiletries, hair products, the kids' toothbrushes, the small medicine pouch with children's fever reducer and bandages. She didn't overpack. This wasn't a vacation. This was a reset. From the kids' rooms, she collected 2 things each. Miles's worn stuffed dog that he pretended he didn't need. Jasmine's favorite bunny, the one she carried everywhere until she fell asleep. Imani dropped them into the duffel like sacred items. She paused at the nightstand on her side of the bed. There was a photo of the 4 of them at a park. Grant's arm around her shoulders, Miles missing a front tooth. Jasmine's cheeks smeared with ice cream. Imani stared at it for half a second. Then she turned the frame face down. She opened her jewelry box. Her rings sat on her finger like they belonged there, because she'd worn them for years. Through pregnancies, through late nights, through moves, through holidays, where she smiled for pictures, even when she felt invisible. Imani slid them off slowly. No shaking hands. No sobbing, Just a quiet removal, like taking off something that stopped fitting a long time ago. She placed the rings on the dresser beside her lotion bottle. Then she grabbed her driver's license from her purse, her passport from the drawer, the kids' social security cards, and her folder. On her way out of the bedroom, she stopped by the hallway closet and pulled out 2 jackets. Then she heard a soft sound behind her, a floorboard. Imani froze. Miles stood in his doorway, eyes wide. "Mom," he whispered. "What are you doing?" Imani walked toward him, lowering her voice instantly. "Go back to bed," she said gently. Miles shook his head once, stubborn. "You're packing." Imani held his gaze. "Yes. Is Daddy coming back?" Miles asked, voice tight. Imani didn't lie. "Not tonight." Miles swallowed. "Are we leaving?" Imani crouched to his level again. "Yes," she said. "But it's okay. We're going to Grandma Elaine's for a little while." Miles stared at her like he was trying to decide if fear or relief was allowed. "Did I do something?" he asked quietly. Imani's heart clenched. "No," she said immediately. "You did nothing wrong. None of this is because of you." Miles's shoulders dropped a fraction. Imani brushed his cheek with her thumb. "You're going to help me," she whispered. Miles blinked. "Help?" "Yes," Imani said. "You're going to be my quiet helper. Can you do that?" Miles nodded slowly. "Yes." "Good," Imani said. "Go put on your hoodie and your shoes. And don't wake Jasmine. I'll wake her when it's time." Miles turned and moved fast, careful, like a little soldier. Imani watched him for a second, then returned to packing. Downstairs, her phone buzzed. Unknown number. For a split second, her body tightened. Grant? But Grant would show as Grant. She let it ring. Then it buzzed again. This time it was a text. "Grant, where are you?" A car door outside, footsteps, soft on the pavement. Imani's heart kicked. She moved to the window and peeked between the curtains. Not Grant. Renee. Renee walked up the driveway with her hood up, moving like she'd done this kind of rescue before. She didn't use the front path directly. She came around the side, staying out of the streetlight. Imani hurried downstairs and opened the door just enough for Renee to slip in. Renee stepped inside, eyes scanning. "You good?" she whispered. Imani nodded. "Kids are here. Miles is up." Renee's jaw tightened. "Of course he is," she said softly, like she was angry on behalf of a child who shouldn't know stress at 8 years old. Renee handed her a small prepaid phone still in the packaging. "This is for emergencies. Use it for the attorney calls and anything sensitive," she whispered. Then she pressed 2 business cards into Imani's palm. "These are the numbers. Call them in the morning. Not tonight." Imani stared at the cards like they were passports. "Thank you," she whispered. Renee leaned in. "Do you know something else?" she asked quietly. "What?" Renee's eyes were sharp. "Grant doesn't have your mama's number saved. I checked your contact list the last time you asked me to help you switch phones. It's not there." Imani blinked, stunned. "Yes, he does," she whispered automatically. Renee shook her head. "He doesn't," she said, "because he never calls her. He never needed to. He never built anything with your people. That's why he thinks you have nowhere to go." Imani's stomach dropped, not because she didn't know Grant was distant, but because seeing it that plain made it feel colder. Renee squeezed her hand. "That's not on you," she whispered. "That's his choice." Imani nodded, eyes steady again. "Okay." Renee glanced toward the stairs. "How fast can you be ready?" 10 minutes, Imani said. Renee nodded. "I'll stay until you're in the car." And Imani. She paused, voice softening. "You don't have to explain anything to him tonight." Imani exhaled. "I wasn't going to." Renee gave a small, fierce smile. "Good." Upstairs, Miles returned in his hoodie, shoes on, backpack strapped like he was going to school. Imani couldn't help it. A quiet laugh slipped out, short and wet with emotion. "Baby, you don't need your backpack." Miles looked down like he'd done something wrong. "I thought, if we're leaving." Imani shook her head gently. "You're smart," she whispered. "But leave it. Just take your hoodie." Miles nodded and set it down quietly. Imani went into Jasmine's room and lifted her daughter carefully. Jasmine stirred. "Mommy?" she mumbled. "Shh," Imani whispered, kissing her cheek. "We're going to Grandma's." Jasmine's eyes didn't even open. "Okay," she breathed, head dropping onto Imani's shoulder. Imani carried her downstairs like she was carrying her whole reason. Renee took one of the bags without asking. They moved through the front door with the porch light off. Imani locked it behind them. She stood there for half a second, keys in hand, staring at the quiet house. The house wasn't a villain, but it wasn't safe anymore. Renee leaned close. "You ready?" Imani looked at her children, Miles standing close, Jasmine asleep in her arms. She looked at the driveway, the street, the quiet that felt like a clean break waiting to happen. "Yes," she whispered. She stepped off the porch. If you've ever watched someone turn love into a bill, you'll understand why what she does next is so clean. Miles climbed into the back seat without being told twice. He didn't ask for cartoons. He didn't complain about the cold. He just scooted close to Jasmine and pulled her seatbelt snug across her chest, the way Imani had taught him. Jasmine was still half asleep, bunny tucked under her chin, hair messy from her pillow. Renee set the duffel in the trunk and shut it gently, then leaned into the driver's window. "You've got gas?" Imani nodded. "Half a tank." Renee's eyes flicked to the street, then back to Imani. "Take the highway out," she said. "Don't use the main road by your subdivision. Less chance you pass him." Imani's fingers tightened on the steering wheel. "He might not come back tonight." Renee's look said, "Don't bet your safety on his mood." "Still," she said, "go now, once you're out. Don't stop unless you have to." Imani glanced back at the kids. Miles stared at her through the rearview mirror, calm in a way that didn't match his age. "You good back there?" Imani asked quietly. Miles nodded. "Yes, ma'am." Renee's mouth twitched at the ma'am. Then she leaned closer. "Call me when you hit the interstate," she whispered. "And in the morning, use that prepaid phone for attorney calls. Keep your regular phone on silent, unless it's me." Imani nodded once. "Thank you." Renee reached through the window and squeezed Imani's hand. Firm. "You're not crazy," she said. "You're awake." Imani swallowed. "Okay." Renee stepped back. "Go," she said. Imani pulled out of the driveway with the porch light still off, tires whispering over the pavement. The neighborhood looked the same as it always did. Tidy lawns, holiday lights still hanging from gutters, cars parked like nothing could ever break. But Imani felt like she'd stepped out of a cage that had always been decorated to look comfortable. Miles leaned toward Jasmine and whispered, "We're going to Grandma Elaine's." Jasmine's eyes fluttered. "Is Daddy coming?" she mumbled. Miles hesitated, then glanced at Imani's eyes in the mirror. He chose his words carefully. "Not yet," he said. "But Grandma Elaine has pancakes." That got a sleepy smile out of Jasmine. "Chocolate chip?" she asked. "Yes," Miles promised, and kissed her forehead like he'd seen Imani do. Imani pressed her lips together hard enough to keep her face steady. She didn't want her kids to see her break. Not tonight. The interstate signs appeared, green and bright against the dark. As soon as she merged onto the highway, Memphis spread out behind her like a glittering outline. Imani took one deep breath, then another. Her phone buzzed in the cup holder. "Grant, where are you?" Imani didn't pick it up. Another buzz. "Grant, answer me." Miles noticed the vibration. He didn't ask what it said. He just stared at the back of Imani's seat, as if looking at it too hard might protect her. Imani's regular phone buzzed again, then again. Like Grant's panic was building by the second, she reached over and flipped it to silent without looking. Jasmine stirred. "Mommy?" she whispered. "I'm here," Imani said. Jasmine's voice was small. "You sound like church voice." Imani almost laughed. "Do I?" Jasmine nodded sleepily. "Church voice means you're trying." Imani's throat tightened. "Yes, baby," she said softly. "I'm trying." Miles leaned forward slightly. "Mom," he said in a whisper. Is this because Daddy said that word? Imani's hands stayed steady at 10 and 2. Yes, she answered honestly. Miles nodded, processing, then said something that made her chest ache. Miles looked out the window at the dark passing trees. So we're leaving, he said, not as a question, more like he was confirming a fact. Yes, Imani replied. Miles was quiet for a long moment. Then, in a voice too mature for 8, he said, Okay. That okay wasn't happiness. It was trust. It was a child choosing his mother because his mother chose him. Imani blinked hard and focused on the road. 20 minutes into the drive, she used the prepaid phone Renee gave her. Renee, she said when her friend answered. You on the interstate? Renee asked immediately. Good, Renee said. How are the kids? Quiet, Imani replied. That's shock, Renee said. It'll wear off. Just keep your tone calm. I am, Imani said, and realized she meant it. Renee's voice softened. You did the right thing. Imani exhaled. Grant's calling. Let him, Renee said. Don't explain. Not tonight. Imani nodded, though Renee couldn't see her. Okay. Renee lowered her voice. When you get close to the state line, pull off somewhere bright, like a big gas station. Not a lonely exit. Use the bathroom. Get coffee. Keep moving. And Imani? Renee added. If he shows up tomorrow acting sweet, remember this? Renee said. A man who can say that to you in front of your kids doesn't just need a nap. He needs consequences. Imani's jaw set. He's getting them. Renee breathed out. Call me when you arrive. Imani ended the call and drove. At a brightly lit gas station near the Tennessee-Mississippi line, Imani parked under a camera and kept her head on a swivel. Miles used the restroom with her, holding Jasmine's hand like he was guiding her through a dream. They returned to the car with snacks and water. Jasmine perked up enough to ask for juice. Miles chose the healthiest option like he was trying to help more. Back on the road, the world began to lighten with early morning gray, and then the guilt tried to creep in. It came as a whisper. Should you have waited? Should you have talked? Should you have given him a chance to apologize? Imani didn't fight it with emotion. She fought it with facts. He said it. He meant it. And her child heard it. That was the end of waiting. By the time the sun began to rise, they were deep into Mississippi, headed toward Imani Johnson's house. Jasmine fell asleep again, cheek pressed to the bunny. Miles stayed awake, watching the road signs like he was counting down. Almost there, Imani told him. Miles nodded. Grandma Elaine makes grits, he said quietly. Imani's lips twitched. Yes, and she prays loud, Miles added. Imani glanced at him. She does. Miles's eyes softened. I like it. Imani didn't answer with words. She just reached back and squeezed his knee gently. Miles held her hand there for a second, like he needed the anchor. When they finally pulled into Elaine's driveway, the sky was pale blue. The porch light clicked on as the front door opened. Elaine stood there in her robe and slippers, hair wrapped, eyes already wet like she'd been watching the street. Imani hadn't called her mother, not with her regular phone. She'd used the prepaid phone hours earlier, voice short, controlled, and honest. Mama, I'm coming. I need you. Elaine didn't ask questions on the phone. She just said, Bring my babies. Now, as Imani stepped out of the SUV and opened the back door, Elaine rushed down the steps. Mama, Imani whispered. Elaine pulled her into a hug so tight it stole Imani's breath. I got you, Elaine said into her ear. You hear me? I got you. Miles climbed out, and Elaine scooped him into one arm, then lifted Jasmine with the other, like she was still strong enough to hold the whole world. My babies, Elaine whispered, kissing their cheeks. Come on inside. Come on. Imani carried the bags in with hands that finally felt like they could relax. Inside, Elaine's house smelled like coffee and warmth. Elaine guided them into the living room and turned on a lamp. Jasmine curled up on the couch immediately. Miles sat upright, still alert, like his body didn't trust peace yet. Elaine looked at Imani, eyes sharp now. Where is he? She asked, voice low. Imani shook her head. Memphis. Elaine's jaw tightened. What did he do? Imani didn't tell the whole story. She didn't have to. She gave her mother the sentence that mattered. "He called me a burden," Imani said. "On his bank card." Elaine's face hardened, and then something like grief flickered across it. "In front of the kids?" Imani nodded once. Imani kept her spine straight. "I'm not staying," she said. "Not after that." Elaine nodded slowly. "Good," she said, surprising Imani with how firm she sounded. "Because the moment a man starts talking like you're an expense instead of his wife, he's telling you exactly how he sees you." Imani's eyes stung. "I don't know what happens next." Elaine touched her cheek gently. "What happens next is we protect you," she said. "And we protect them." Imani took a breath. "Okay." Elaine turned toward the kitchen. "Sit," she ordered. "I'll make breakfast." Miles spoke up quietly. "Grandma Elaine, Daddy is going to be mad." Elaine paused and looked at him, softening instantly. "Baby, he can be mad," she said. "But he can't be mean to your mama and think we're going to act like that's normal." Miles nodded, comforted by the certainty. Imani's regular phone buzzed again on the table. Grant calling. She let it ring. It buzzed again. She let it ring. Elaine glanced at it with a look that said she wanted to throw it in the sink. "You don't have to answer," Elaine murmured. "I'm not," Imani said. Then the phone lit up with a new message. "Grant, if you took my car, bring it back. You have no right to just leave." Imani's eyes narrowed slightly. "He thinks he owns everything," she said quietly. Elaine leaned in. "He thinks because he pays bills, you don't have rights," she replied. "He's about to learn." Imani didn't respond to Grant. Instead, she opened her bag, pulled out her folder, and placed it on her mother's kitchen table like it belonged there. Elaine looked at it. "What's that?" "Everything I need," Imani said. Elaine nodded. "Okay." Imani's phone buzzed again. Another call from Grant, then another text. "Grant, call me right now." Imani stared at the words, calm settling deeper in her chest. She wasn't going to argue with him. She wasn't going to plead. She wasn't going to explain herself into respect. She reached into her wallet and pulled out Grant's credit card, the one he'd been so proud to give her, because it proved he was the provider, the one he now used like a leash. She stared at it for a second. Then she walked to the kitchen counter, grabbed a pair of scissors, and cut the card cleanly in half. No shaking. No drama. Just a straight cut. Miles's eyes widened. "Mom." Imani met his gaze. "No more," she said quietly. She returned to the table, pulled out a sheet of paper, and wrote a short note in clear, steady handwriting. Not long. Not emotional. Just final. Elaine watched her write, then nodded once like she understood this language. Imani folded the note, placed the two halves of the card on top, and slid it into an envelope. "Who's that for?" Elaine asked. "For him," Imani replied. Elaine's eyes were sharp. "How's he going to get it?" Imani thought for half a second, then said, "I'll have it delivered." Elaine nodded. "Okay." Miles swallowed. "Mom, is Daddy going to come here?" Imani crouched beside him. "No," she said. "He doesn't even know where we are." Elaine's eyebrows lifted. "He don't?" Imani shook her head. "He doesn't have your number saved," she said quietly, more stunned now that she said it out loud in this house. Elaine stared at her. "He doesn't have my number?" Imani's voice stayed flat. "No." Elaine's face tightened. Then she laughed once, sharp and humorless. "So he married you and never bothered to know your people," she said. "That tells me everything." Imani didn't respond. She didn't need to. Back in Memphis, Grant returned to a quiet house and felt his control slipping fast. He walked in calling names with a fake calm he didn't feel. Imani? Miles? Jasmine? No little feet. No sleepy voices. He hit the kitchen light and stopped cold. On the table was an envelope, and beside it, his credit card. Snapped. Grant's heart slammed into his ribs. He grabbed the note and read it once. "I removed the burden from your life. The kids and I have left. Do not try to find us. We'll be in touch when we're safe." Grant's breath came quick. "No," he whispered. like he could undo it with sound. He ran through the house, opening doors too hard. Jasmine's room, half her closet empty, Miles's drawers, missing clothes, the bathroom, her toothbrush gone, the kids' toothbrushes gone, the closet, Imani's suitcase missing. Grant stumbled back into the kitchen and snatched up his phone, fingers clumsy. He called Imani, straight to voicemail. He texted, "Where are you?" No reply. He called again. Nothing. Grant's mind raced. Renee? Her mama? Somebody. He scrolled through his contacts and realized something that made his stomach drop. He didn't have Elaine's number. He stared at the screen like it was a trick. How did he not have his mother-in-law's number? Because he never needed it. Because he never cared enough to save it. Because Imani handled everything outside his world. Grant's jaw tightened. No, he muttered. No, no, no. He opened his laptop on the kitchen island and logged into the bank app the way he always did when he wanted to feel powerful. He typed his password. Incorrect. He tried again, slower. Incorrect. He tried a third time. The screen locked him out. Grant's hands went cold. He grabbed his phone and called the bank's customer service line, pacing the kitchen like a caged animal. When a representative answered, his voice was sharp. "I'm locked out of my accounts," he said. "Fix it." The representative's tone stayed polite. "Sir, for security reasons." "I don't care," Grant snapped. "Those accounts are mine." There was a pause while the representative checked. Then the words landed like a hammer. "Sir, the accounts are currently frozen due to a pending separation action." Grant stopped pacing. "What?" he said, too loud. "Your joint accounts have been flagged," the representative continued calmly. "There was a withdrawal earlier, and the remaining funds are temporarily restricted pending legal processing." "Sir, I can't disclose." "It was my wife," Grant cut in. "Imani." Another pause. "Sir, I can confirm the action aligns with the joint account permissions." Grant's chest rose and fell hard. "Unfreeze it," he said. "I can't," the representative replied. "You'll need to follow the legal instructions you receive. It should outline the next steps." Grant stared at the snapped card on the table. The note he'd read too many times already. The empty chair that suddenly looked like a warning. His money wasn't a leash anymore. It was locked, and the people he thought he owned were gone. Grant whispered, barely audible, "Imani." "What did you do?" Grant walked into the office like nothing was wrong. Suit pressed, watch on, hair neat, coffee in hand. He didn't sleep, but he moved like a man who could afford exhaustion. His assistant glanced up. "Morning, Mr. Thompson." "Morning," Grant replied, smooth. He kept walking. He stepped into the elevator, alone, and his phone buzzed again. No response. He typed another message and deleted it before sending. Then another, then deleted that too. By the time he reached the 7th floor, the panic had nowhere to go but deeper. In the conference room, his team was already seated. A presentation glowed on the screen. Numbers, projections, timelines. The kind of work Grant understood. The kind of work that respected him. His boss, Malcolm Reeves, sat at the head of the table, salt and pepper hair, calm eyes, the posture of a man who never raised his voice because he didn't have to. "Grant," Malcolm said, "you good to lead this?" Grant forced a small smile. "Of course." He clicked the remote. The first slide appeared. His mouth opened. Nothing came out for a beat. One of the younger analysts shifted uncomfortably. Grant cleared his throat. "Okay," he began, voice controlled. "We're looking at first quarter performance and the expansion plan." His phone buzzed on the table. Grant ignored it. He kept talking. He pointed at charts. He referenced numbers. He used all the phrases that made people nod. But his mind kept skipping back to the kitchen table. The snapped card. The note. The bank representative's calm voice, pending separation action. He advanced to the next slide and misread a number. It was small. Most people wouldn't catch it. Malcolm did. Malcolm didn't correct him immediately. He watched. Grant continued, trying to recover, but he kept losing his place like his brain was buffering. Finally, Malcolm leaned back slightly and said, "Grant." Pause. The room stilled. Grant's jaw tightened. "Yes?" Malcolm's voice stayed even. "You've been sharp for years. Today you're somewhere else. Is there something going on?" Grant forced a laugh that didn't sound like him. "No, just a long night." Malcolm's gaze didn't move. "A long night is one thing," he said. "Losing control in front of your team is another." Grant's face warmed with embarrassment and anger. "I'm fine," he said quickly. Too quickly. Malcolm nodded once. "Okay," he said, still calm. "Then answer this question." He tapped the table lightly. "Are we safe on the numbers you're presenting?" "Because I don't like guessing." Grant stared at the screen. The numbers blurred for a second. He swallowed. "Yes," he said, then corrected himself. "I mean, yes, we're safe." Malcolm didn't call him out further, not in front of everyone. But he gave Grant a look that said, "We're talking after this." Grant finished the meeting by muscle memory. When people filed out, Malcolm stayed behind. Grant gathered his laptop too slowly, pretending he had time. "Close the door," Malcolm said. Grant did. Malcolm leaned against the table. "Talk to me," he said. "What's happening?" Grant kept his tone clipped. "It's personal, not work." Malcolm didn't blink. "Personal becomes work when it shows up in my conference room," he replied. "I'm not asking to gossip. I'm asking because I need you steady." Grant's phone buzzed again. This time it wasn't Imani. It was a number he didn't recognize, a local courier service. Grant stared at the screen like it might explode. Malcolm noticed. "Answer it," he said, a woman's voice. "Professional. Mr. Grant Thompson?" "Yes, we have documents that require your signature. We attempted delivery this morning, but you weren't available at home. Can we deliver to your office?" Grant's chest tightened. "What documents?" "I'm not authorized to discuss contents," the woman said, "but they're time-sensitive." Grant's eyes flicked to Malcolm, who watched him carefully. "Bring them," Grant snapped. "Front desk." He hung up. Malcolm's eyebrows lifted. "Time-sensitive documents," he repeated. "That sounds like more than a long night." Grant's jaw flexed. "It's handled." Malcolm studied him. "I've been married," he said quietly. "I've been divorced too. Don't play tough with me, Grant. It doesn't help." Grant's throat tightened. He didn't want compassion. He wanted control. "I said it's handled," Grant repeated. Malcolm nodded slowly. "Okay," he said. "But if you slip again, I'm pulling you from client-facing work until you stabilize. You understand me?" Grant's eyes flashed. "Yes." Malcolm held his gaze. "Good," he said. "Get it together." Grant walked out of the room with his face composed and his insides cracking. At his desk, he stared at his phone. He tried calling Imani again, straight to voicemail. He tried texting her again. "We need to talk. This is getting out of hand." He opened his contacts and typed Elaine. Nothing. He tried Mom. That was his mother, not hers. He realized, with a hot twist of humiliation, that he didn't have his mother-in-law's number saved. Not in 11 years of marriage. Not once did he care enough to store it. He scrolled anyway, desperate, as if her number might magically appear. Grant slammed the phone down and stood up, pacing. He called Renee. It rang and rang. No answer. He called again, straight to voicemail. Grant's mind jumped to the easiest story. They're all in on it. They're turning her against me. This is manipulation. This is irrational. He clung to that because the other possibility was worse. The other possibility was that Imani didn't vanish in emotion. She vanished with a plan. A knock came at his office door. His assistant peeked in. "Sir, there's a courier at the front desk. He says it's urgent." Grant's stomach dropped. "Send him in." A man in a polo shirt entered holding a large envelope. "Grant Thompson?" he asked. "Need your signature right here." Grant scribbled without thinking. The courier handed him the envelope and left. Grant stared at it for half a second, then tore it open like it was on fire. The first page hit him like a punch. Petition for dissolution of marriage. He flipped. Temporary orders request. He flipped again. His mouth went dry. He read fast, eyes scanning for the worst parts. Grant Thompson, respondent. Irreconcilable differences. Financial and emotional neglect. request for primary physical custody, a detailed schedule, a request for child support and spousal support. He stopped at the numbers. His eyes narrowed, then widened. "What?" he whispered, voice cracking. The numbers weren't random. They were structured, calculated, clean. Grant's hands trembled slightly. He hated that. He hated feeling anything he couldn't control. A final page slid out as he flipped too hard. It wasn't legal jargon. It was a list. Dates, times, school drop-offs, doctor visits, work trips, nights he came home after midnight. Text messages printed out and attached, screenshots. Not dramatic, not angry, just documented. Grant stared at the pages and felt something shift. This wasn't Imani guessing. This wasn't Imani being emotional. This was Imani building a case. His door opened without a knock. A woman stepped in like she belonged there. Tall, older, with a posture that carried authority. "Grant," she said, voice sharp, "what is this I'm hearing?" It was his sister, Paige Thompson. Paige had never liked Imani much. Not because of anything Imani did, but because Paige didn't like not being the most important woman in her brother's life. Grant looked up at her. "How did you—" Paige waved her phone. "Mom called me," she snapped. "Said you were having trouble, and your wife took the kids." Grant's jaw tightened. "Imani took the kids, and my money." Paige froze. "Your money?" she repeated, skeptical. Grant shoved the papers toward her. "Look at this," he said. "She filed for divorce. She's freezing accounts. She's trying to—" Paige picked up the papers and started reading. Her eyes moved quickly. Paige worked in healthcare administration. She understood forms. She understood how serious temporary orders were. As she read, her expression changed. She looked up slowly. "Grant," she said, voice quieter. "What did you do?" Grant stiffened. "Nothing. She's overreacting." Paige's eyes narrowed. "Overreacting?" she repeated. "This is not an overreaction packet. This is prepared." Grant's jaw flexed. "She has that friend, Renee. She's filling her head." Paige looked back down at the evidence pages. "This isn't filling her head," she said. "These are screenshots, Grant." Grant's throat tightened. "She's twisting it." Paige stared at him. "Okay," she said slowly. "Then tell me the truth. Why would she do this now?" Grant hesitated. Paige's eyes sharpened. "What did you say to her?" Grant's lips pressed together. Paige took a step closer. "Grant," she said, voice low. "You don't go from normal marriage problems to frozen accounts and custody filings overnight unless something snapped." "What did you say?" Grant's mind flashed to the kitchen. The receipt, the insult. He didn't want to say it out loud, saying it made it real. Paige waited. Grant exhaled through his nose. "We argued about money," he said. Paige didn't move. "And?" Grant's voice dropped. "I told her to stop wasting my money." Paige's eyes didn't blink. "And?" Grant's stomach tightened. "I said she was a burden." Paige's face changed, hardening in a way that startled even him. "In front of the kids?" she asked. Grant looked away. Miles was supposed to be asleep. Paige scoffed. "Miles is 8, she said. "You think he doesn't hear you? You think he doesn't feel the tension in that house? You said that with your child in the hallway, and now you're surprised she left." Grant snapped. "You're taking her side?" Paige lifted a hand. "I'm taking reality's side," she said, "because I'm looking at a legal filing that is going to tear you up if you keep pretending you're the victim." Grant's phone buzzed again. He picked it up without looking. Bank notification, account access restricted. His face went pale. Paige watched him, then sighed. "Grant," she said, softer, "did you really believe money was going to keep them there forever?" Grant's jaw clenched. "I provided," he said, like the word should excuse everything. Paige glanced around his office. Glass walls, awards, framed degrees, a photo of him shaking hands with Malcolm. She looked back at him. "You provided," she echoed. "But did you value them?" Grant didn't answer. Paige slid the papers back toward him. "You need a lawyer," she said. "A good one. Today." "I already have one." Grant lied. Paige stared at him. "No, you don't," she said. "Because if you did, you wouldn't be standing here shocked that joint accounts can be frozen." Grant's face tightened. Paige grabbed her coat from the chair and turned toward the door. Then she paused. "You know what's wild?" she said, looking back. "You always told us you saved her, like she came from nothing and you gave her a life." Grant's eyes flashed. Paige continued, voice firm. "But I'm reading this, and all I see is a woman who kept records, raised kids, managed a home, and waited until you gave her one clean reason to leave without looking messy." Grant's breath came sharp. Paige shook her head. "She didn't steal," she said. "She protected herself." Grant sat down slowly, staring at the paperwork. The office felt too quiet. He looked at the list of dates again. The school schedule, the doctor appointments, the proof of who actually carried the daily weight. He didn't even know Miles's pediatrician's name. He didn't know Jasmine's teacher's email. He didn't know because he never had to, because Imani handled it. And now she had used the same quiet competence to walk away. Grant pushed back from the desk and stood, restless, then walked out of the office without telling anyone. He drove home, gripping the steering wheel too tight, and entered the house like he was entering a museum where he used to live. The silence hit him first, then the emptiness. He moved room to room, not to search. He'd already searched, but because he couldn't accept it. In Jasmine's room, the bed was made. The closet looked too bare. A few hangers swayed slightly, like they missed weight. On the floor near the corner, he saw it. Jasmine's doll. The one with the soft brown curls that Jasmine named Princess Star. Jasmine carried it everywhere, even to the grocery store. It was lying on its side, dress wrinkled, one shoe missing. Grant stared at it. For the first time since the night before, something in his chest sank past anger. He picked it up slowly. The house didn't feel like a kingdom anymore. It felt like an empty trophy. Grant walked back to the kitchen and dropped into the chair Imani used to sit in during homework time. He looked at the paperwork spread across the table. He ran a hand down his face. And for the first time, the truth slid in with no place to hide. Imani didn't disappear to punish him. She disappeared because she finally saw the exit as the only safe lesson for her children. Stay with this, because the part everyone expects to be messy is where she's the calmest. Elaine's kitchen sounded like safety. A pot lid clinked. A spoon scraped a bowl. The coffee maker hissed like it had work to do. Miles sat at the table with a blanket around his shoulders, eating toast like it was a job. Jasmine sat sideways in her chair, feet swinging, humming to herself while Elaine buttered her pancakes. Imani stood at the sink, washing a cup that didn't need washing. Elaine watched her for a second and said, "Sit down, baby." "I'm fine," Imani replied. Elaine's eyes narrowed. "That cup is already clean." Imani set it down slowly and finally sat. Elaine slid a plate in front of her. "Eat," she ordered. "You can't build a new life on an empty stomach." Imani nodded and took a bite. Her jaw worked, but she barely tasted it. Miles glanced up at her. "Mom," he said softly. Imani met his eyes. "Yeah?" Miles hesitated, then said, "Mom doesn't cry here." The words hit Imani like a hand on her chest. Elaine's head turned sharply. "What you mean, baby?" she asked. Miles shrugged, embarrassed. "At home, Mom's eyes get wet sometimes, but here she looks normal." Imani's throat tightened. She didn't want her son tracking her pain like weather. Elaine walked around the table and kissed the top of Miles's head. "That's because this house don't charge rent for love," she said, loud enough for Imani to hear. Jasmine giggled without understanding. "Grandma Elaine, can I have more syrup?" "Yes, ma'am," Elaine replied automatically, then looked at Imani again, softer. "You hear your boy," she said. "That tells you everything." Imani nodded once. Her prepaid phone buzzed on the table. "Renee," Imani answered quickly. "Hey." Renee's voice came through clear. "How are you?" "Here," Imani replied. "Good," Renee said. "Attorney can see you at 10, the one I told you about." "Her name is Naomi Vance," Imani exhaled. "Okay, you got transportation?" Renee asked. "I'm using Grant's SUV," Imani said. Renee didn't hesitate. That's fine, she replied. It's marital property while you're married. Let your lawyer guide you, don't let him scare you. Imani's eyes flicked to her regular phone sitting face down on the counter. Renee's tone sharpened. Has he tried calling? Yes, Imani said. Don't answer on your main line, Renee reminded. Let him leave messages. Documentation matters. Imani nodded. Okay, Renee lowered her voice. And Imani, don't let today turn into emotion wrestling. You're not there to prove you're hurt. You're there to protect your kids. I know, Imani said. And she meant it. Renee paused. Call me after. Imani ended the call and stood. Elaine's eyes followed her. Where are you going? To see a lawyer, Imani said. Elaine nodded with satisfaction. Good. Miles looked up. Are you coming back? Imani walked to him and crouched. Yes, she said. I'll be back before lunch. Miles glanced at Jasmine. Can Jasmine come with you? Imani shook her head gently. No, baby. Grandma Elaine is going to keep you both here. You'll be safe. Miles nodded, but his eyes didn't leave her face. Imani took his hands. Listen to me, she said. None of this is your job. You understand? Imani kissed his forehead. I love you. Miles nodded, swallowing. Love you too. Jasmine waved her syrupy hand. Bye, Mommy. Imani forced a small smile. Bye, baby. Elaine walked her to the door. You need me to come? She asked. Imani shook her head. Not this time. Elaine's eyes tightened. If he shows up here? He won't, Imani said. He doesn't even have your number saved. Elaine scoffed again, still stunned by that. Well, she said, that's his problem. Imani stepped outside and got into the SUV, hands steady. When she arrived at Naomi Vance's office, it didn't look fancy. No marble floors, no intimidating lobby, just a clean waiting room, a receptionist with kind eyes, and framed photos of smiling families on the wall. Naomi Vance came out herself. She was in her 40s, black, hair pulled back neatly, suit sharp but not cold. Her eyes had the kind of focus that made Imani sit up straighter before she even spoke. Imani Johnson Thompson? Naomi asked. Yes, Imani replied. Naomi held out her hand. Naomi Vance. Come on back. Imani followed her into an office where the desk was uncluttered and the chairs looked like they had held a lot of hard conversations. Naomi sat and opened a folder. Renee gave me the short version, she said, but I want it in your words. Imani didn't hesitate. He called me a burden, she said. On his bank card, in front of our kids. Naomi's face didn't change much, but her eyes sharpened. How old are they? Miles is 8. Jasmine is 5, Imani answered. Naomi nodded. And you're not currently employed? No, Imani said. He didn't want me to work. We moved for his career when Jasmine was born. I stayed home. Naomi tapped her pen once. Do you have access to money? Imani slid her folder across the desk. I withdrew from our joint savings before the freeze, she said calmly. Not everything. Enough to keep the kids stable. Naomi's gaze held hers. Good, she said simply. That's not theft. That's security. Imani exhaled. Relieved, Naomi didn't flinch. Naomi flipped through the paperwork. You kept notes, she said. Yes, Imani replied. Naomi looked up. Why? Imani's voice stayed steady. Because I realized a long time ago he was building a story about me, she said. That I was careless. That I was expensive. That I didn't contribute. Naomi nodded slowly. And you decided you weren't going to be unprepared when he tried to sell that story to a judge. Yes, Imani said. Naomi leaned forward. Let's be clear on your goal, she said. What do you want? Imani didn't blink. Safety. Custody. A future where my children never hear love priced again, she said. And I want a clean process. Naomi's mouth tightened with approval. You're not asking for revenge, she said. I'm asking for respect, Imani replied. Naomi sat back. Good, she said. Because clean wins. She slid a form toward Imani. We're going to request temporary orders, she said. Custody, child support, spousal support. A schedule. Boundaries. No surprise visits. Communication in writing. Imani nodded. Naomi's voice stayed calm. He will be angry, she said. He will try to intimidate you. He will say you're irrational. He will say you stole. He will say you're keeping the kids from him. Imani's eyes stayed steady. And will answer with facts, she said. Naomi nodded once. Exactly. Imani signed where Naomi told her to. When she left the office, her phone buzzed again, her regular phone. Grant calling. She didn't answer. It buzzed again, then a text. Grant, you embarrassed me. This is not how adults handle problems. Imani stared at it for a second, then turned her phone back face down. Naomi's voice echoed in her head. Communication in writing. Documentation matters. Grant, bring the kids home. We can talk. I didn't mean it. Imani's stomach tightened at the "we can talk," like he was still the one deciding what happened next. She didn't reply. A minute later, another message came through. Grant, you're making this messy. Imani almost laughed. Almost? Messy would have been screaming, breaking things, calling his boss, posting on social media, dragging family into it with drama. This was quiet. This was structured. This was the opposite of messy. She drove back to Elaine's with her hands steady and her mind clear. At the house, Miles met her at the door before Elaine could. He looked her up and down like he was checking her. You okay? He asked. Imani nodded. I'm okay, she said. Miles stared at her face, then said it again, like he was confirming what he'd already noticed. Mom doesn't cry here, he murmured. Imani crouched and hugged him, tight and quick. No, she whispered. Not here. Miles hugged her back, like he'd been holding his breath all morning. Elaine appeared behind him. How'd it go? She asked. Imani stood. Good, she said. We filed temporary orders. Elaine nodded. Good. Jasmine ran up and wrapped her arms around Imani's legs. Mommy! Grandma Elaine let me stir the batter. Imani smiled and kissed her hair. Did you do a good job? Yes, Jasmine said proudly. I didn't spill. Imani looked at her children. Safe, warm, laughing, and her chest loosened in a way it hadn't in months. Back in Memphis, Grant sat in his office pretending to work. He had the legal packet open in a tab. He had the bank app open on his phone, still locked. He had an email from Malcolm asking if he needed the afternoon off. Grant didn't answer Malcolm. Instead, he called Imani again, straight to voicemail. He called Renee again, no answer. He called his mother. Mom, he said the second she picked up. Have you heard from her? His mother's voice was sharp. All I heard is my grandbabies are gone, and you're sitting there asking questions like you didn't cause it. Grant's jaw tightened. Mom, I didn't cause... You always think you don't, she cut in. Paige told me what you said. Grant froze. Paige. She said you called your wife a burden, his mother continued. In front of your kids. Grant's throat tightened. It was a fight. His mother's tone hardened. Words are not harmless because you said them in a fight, she said. Your father never spoke to me like that. And if he did, I would have packed too. Grant's face flushed with anger. So you're taking her side too? I'm taking my grandchildren's side, his mother snapped. Because those babies don't deserve to live in a house where their mother is treated like she's lucky to be there. Grant clenched his teeth. I provided. His mother scoffed. You keep saying that like it's love, she replied. Provision without respect is a transaction. Grant swallowed, stunned by how clearly she said it. Then his mother delivered the line that hit hardest. You want them back? She asked. Stop asking her to come home and start asking what you need to change. Because she didn't leave because she's dramatic. She left because she finally believed you. Grant's mouth opened. Nothing came out. He ended the call without saying goodbye and sat staring at his desk like it was the first time he'd ever been alone. His phone buzzed again. A calendar invite from Malcolm Grant. 4 p.m. Quick check-in. Grant's stomach sank. He wasn't just losing his family. He was losing the image that held his career together. And he had no one to blame but the words he chose when he thought his money made him untouchable. The mediation building was quiet in a way that made every footstep sound like a decision. Imani walked in holding Naomi Vance's folder against her chest, shoulders squared, face calm. She wore a simple navy dress, not to impress anyone, just to feel like herself again. Naomi walked beside her, steady as a metronome. "Remember," Naomi said softly, "today is not about winning an argument. It's about setting terms that protect your children." Imani nodded once. "I'm not here to perform," she replied. "I'm here to finish." Down the hallway, a door opened. Grant stepped out with his attorney, tie perfectly knotted, jaw tight like he was biting down on pride. His eyes found Imani immediately. They flickered, anger, relief, disbelief, then settled on control. He took a step forward. "Imani," Naomi moved slightly, blocking the path without touching him. "All communication goes through counsel," she said evenly. Grant's mouth tightened. "I'm talking to my wife." Imani's voice was level. "We're here for the kids," she said, not giving him the word wife to hold. Grant exhaled sharply and looked her up and down like he was checking for weakness. When he didn't find it, his eyes narrowed. "So you really did this," he said. Imani didn't respond. A mediator opened the conference room door. "Everyone ready?" They filed into a long room with a plain table, 2 pitchers of water, and chairs that felt designed to keep people honest because comfort made it easier to lie. Imani sat beside Naomi. Grant sat across with his attorney. The mediator took the head of the table and spoke in a practiced, calm tone about process and cooperation. Grant barely listened. His eyes stayed on Imani like he was waiting for her to crack and admit she made a mistake. The mediator folded her hands. "We're here to discuss temporary orders," she said. "Custody schedule, child support, spousal support, and communication guidelines." Grant leaned forward. "Temporary?" he repeated, a small laugh escaping. "This shouldn't be happening at all." Naomi didn't blink. "It's happening," she said. Grant's attorney murmured something to him. Grant nodded as if he was being coached on how to sound reasonable. Grant cleared his throat and aimed his voice at the mediator, but his eyes stayed on Imani. "Look," he began, "I provide. I've always provided. Imani hasn't worked in years. That was our arrangement. I never left them without anything." Imani's fingers stayed still on Naomi's folder. She didn't flinch at the "hasn't worked," the way he said it like she'd been on vacation. Grant continued, warming up to his favorite argument. "So when she says I made her feel unsafe, I don't understand it. This is about money. She got upset over a conversation, and now she's punishing me." He spread his hands like the victim of a misunderstanding. "I didn't mean it the way she's taking it. I said something in the heat of the moment." "That's it." Naomi's pen tapped once. "In front of the children," she said, quiet but sharp. Grant's face tightened. They were supposed to be asleep. Imani spoke for the first time since sitting down. Her voice was soft. "Miles wasn't," she said, "and he heard you." Grant stared at her like she'd broken a rule by speaking plainly. "Imani," he said, lowering his voice as if that made him compassionate, "you know I love our kids." Imani nodded once. "Then talk like it," she replied. Grant's attorney leaned in and whispered again. Grant sat back and tried a different angle. "I just want my family back," he said, and for a second it sounded sincere, until he added, "You don't have to do all this. You can come home. We can talk privately. We can handle it like adults." Imani looked at him, calm and unmoved. "Adults don't reduce people to costs," she said. Grant's jaw flexed. "You're twisting everything," he snapped, then caught himself and forced his voice down. "I'm saying I work hard. I feel pressure, and I'm not going to apologize for being responsible." Naomi slid a packet forward across the table, stopping it halfway like a line in the sand. "No one asked you to apologize for working," she said. "You're being asked to stop treating your wife like a debit transaction." Grant's eyes flashed. "She used my money," he said, the sentence spilling out before he could polish it. "That's the truth. She lives off me, and the second I say anything about it, she disappears and freezes accounts." The mediator raised a hand. Let's keep this constructive. Grant leaned forward again, voice sharpening with emotion he couldn't disguise. I'm not trying to be cruel, he said. But what did she contribute financially? I'm the one paying everything. The house, the schools, the groceries, every bill. So when she acts like I'm some monster for noticing the spending, it feels... Imani finally opened the folder. Naomi glanced at Imani, giving a tiny nod. Go! Imani slid a single sheet forward. This is the ledger you kept ignoring, she said. Grant's eyes flicked down, unimpressed. What is that? Imani didn't raise her voice. She didn't insult him. She didn't plead. She just spoke like a woman reading facts in a room that only respected facts. Year 1, she said, tapping the page. I was working full-time. 2 incomes. Grant's mouth tightened. Then you got your promotion, she continued. We moved. Not because I wanted to, but because it was your next step. Grant shifted in his chair. Imani looked up at him. Jasmine was a newborn, she said. You told me you didn't want daycare. You told me it was better if I stayed home. You said we could afford it, and you wanted our kids raised by family. Grant opened his mouth. Imani kept going. So I paused my career, she said, not because I couldn't handle work, because I was handling everything else. Grant's eyes narrowed, but he stayed quiet. Imani slid another page forward. This is our childcare schedule, she said. Every day for 8 years. School drop-offs, pickups, doctor visits, parent meetings, homework, night routines, sick days, field trips. Grant glanced at it. His face shifted slightly, like he recognized some of the dates, but not the effort behind them. Imani's voice stayed even. These are the work trips you took, she said, sliding another page. And these are the nights you came home past midnight. I didn't complain. I adjusted. Because I believed we were building together. Grant's attorney leaned forward, eyes scanning, suddenly more alert. Imani tapped the next page. This is the list of things the kids need regularly, she said. Shoes, coats, school supplies, lunch money, hair appointments, sports fees, medicine, dentist visits. Grant scoffed, trying to regain control. So you're saying you bought them coats? Imani met his eyes, calm. I'm saying you tried to shame me for providing for our children, she replied. And you did it in front of them. Grant's jaw tightened. I never said don't buy them things, he argued. I said stop wasting money. Imani nodded slowly, like she'd expected that line. That's what you tell yourself, she said. But what you taught our son in that hallway was different. Grant's throat tightened. Imani, she lifted her hand slightly. Not aggressive, just firm. The moment you reduced me to cost, she said, voice quiet but clear, you ended us. The room went still. Even the mediator paused, pen hovering. Grant blinked hard. That's not fair, he said, and the words came out smaller than he wanted. I was stressed. Imani didn't move. Stress doesn't turn love into a bill, she replied. Grant's face reddened. So what? He snapped. I'm just supposed to pay and smile while you spend. Imani tilted her head slightly. You still don't hear it, she said. Naomi leaned in, voice calm. Mr. Thompson, she said, your wife isn't asking to spend your money. She's asking you to stop using money to measure her worth. Grant clenched his jaw, eyes darting, searching for an angle that restored control. I want 50-50 custody, he said quickly. I'm their father. Imani nodded once. You are, she agreed. And that's why we need a plan that protects them from adult fights, Grant scoffed. Protects them from me? Imani's voice stayed soft. Protects them from hearing their mother called a burden, she said. Protects them from learning that love comes with permission. The mediator cleared her throat. Let's discuss a custody schedule, she said, moving them forward. The next hour was tense and structured. Grant pushed for control. He wanted flexibility that favored his work schedule. He wanted drop-ins. He wanted phone access whenever he decided he was ready to be a parent. Imani didn't fight with emotion. She answered with boundaries. No surprise visits, she said. Communication in writing. Grant rolled his eyes. So you can build more evidence against me. Imani didn't take the bait. So the kids don't watch us argue, she said. Naomi reinforced it calmly. Written communication reduces conflict. It's standard. When support numbers were discussed, Grant's face tightened again. He tried to frame it as robbery. I'm already paying for everything, he snapped. Now you want more? Imani looked at him steadily. No, she said. I want what keeps our kids stable. The mediator summarized the proposed temporary orders. Primary physical custody with Imani for now. A structured visitation schedule for Grant. Support payments calculated by the guidelines. And communication rules. Grant's attorney whispered to him again. Grant's eyes flared, but something in him finally understood the room wasn't impressed by his anger. He signed. Not because he wanted to, because he had to. When the meeting ended, Grant stood quickly, chair scraping the floor. He looked at Imani like he expected her to say something soft, something that made this feel reversible. Imani didn't. Grant swallowed. Imani, he said, voice lower. I didn't mean it. Imani held his gaze for a beat. You meant it enough to say it, she replied. Then she turned and walked out with Naomi. Outside, the air felt lighter, like someone had opened a window in Imani's chest. Naomi looked at her. You did well, she said. Imani nodded, voice quiet. I didn't want to hate him, she admitted. Naomi's expression softened. You don't have to hate someone to choose yourself, she said. Now go be a mother in peace. Back at Elaine's house, Miles met her at the door again. He searched her face. Imani dropped her keys into the bowl and knelt. It's done, she said softly. Miles's shoulders lowered, like, done? Imani nodded. We have rules now, she said, and nobody gets to talk to me like that anymore. Miles looked behind her as if expecting Grant to appear. So we stay here? For now, Imani said, and we're going to build from here. Miles nodded, then hugged her hard, quick, like he didn't want anyone to see he needed it. Jasmine ran up with her bunny. Mommy. Grandma Elaine said we can go to the park later. Imani smiled, real this time. We can, she said. In the weeks that followed, Imani didn't fall apart. She moved. Naomi connected her with a return-to-work program and a recruiter looking for someone with communications experience. Renee helped her update her resume at Elaine's kitchen table between pancake breakfasts and school drop-offs. Elaine watched the kids when Imani took online training modules on a borrowed laptop. Miles started sleeping through the night again. Jasmine started laughing louder. One afternoon, Miles looked up from his homework and said, Mom, you smile more now. Imani paused, then nodded. I do, she said. Miles looked down at his pencil. I like this house, he admitted. Imani leaned over and kissed his head. Me too, she whispered. But they still carried the same center. Him. I didn't mean it. I was stressed. I want my family back. He never said the sentence that mattered most. I was wrong to measure you that way. The house stayed clean because a cleaning service came twice a month now. The fridge stayed stocked because he ordered delivery. But nothing in the house felt alive. One evening, he found Jasmine's doll again, still on the shelf where he'd placed it like an apology. He held it for a long moment, then set it down carefully, as if tenderness could undo consequences. It couldn't. Some lessons don't arrive with a shout. They arrive with silence. And Grant finally understood the price of the words he thought were small, because the people who made his life warm were no longer there to absorb them.